Welcome to Life Stories, where we dive into the lives that shape us, the struggles that define us, and the triumphs that remind us of what's possible. Today's story is one of resilience, ambition, and the power of creating your own legacy. Follow Emma's journey as she defies expectations, overcomes family pressures, and builds an empire that challenges everything she was once told she couldn't achieve. It's a tale of proving your worth, not to others, but to yourself. Subscribe to the channel to begin today's journey with us. Let's get started. The mahogany walls of my father's study seemed to close in on me as he signed the final document with a flourish. The scratching of his blank pen against paper felt like nails on a chalkboard. I could barely look at him as he pushed the trust fund transfer papers across his desk. "It's done," he said curtly, his voice as cold as the polished wood beneath his fingertips. "All $2 million will go to Sarah. Not you." At 28, I was being written off by my family for the last time. I'd known this moment was coming for years. But now that it had arrived, the weight of it was almost unbearable. My heart sank. But I kept my composure. For years, I had been the disappointment, the one who had failed to meet my father's expectations. And today, he made it official. Sarah stood by the window, watching the city skyline with an expression of quiet triumph. It wasn't that she was malicious, she had always been the golden child, the one who could do no wrong in our parents' eyes. She was their perfect lawyer, well on her way to becoming partner at her firm by the time she was 32. In their eyes, she was everything they had hoped I would be. As for me, I was nothing more than an afterthought. A lost cause, my father would say. "Emma, if you'd just gone to law school." Like Sarah, my mother sighed from her place in the leather armchair, her hands folded in her lap. "If you'd just applied yourself." I wanted to laugh. I had applied myself, just not in the way they expected. But my words caught in my throat. "I did apply myself," I said softly. "I just didn't do it your way." My father's gaze hardened, and he stood, towering over his desk. The very air in the room felt thick, like I was suffocating. "Playing with computers in that tiny apartment of yours isn't applying yourself," he snapped. "Your sister's about to become partner at Thompson and Mitchell at 32, while you're coding websites for small businesses, living in that pathetic little apartment in the city." It was always the same. They never understood what I was doing. What they saw as playing with computers was actually the development of something revolutionary. I was building a financial technology platform, Athena, that would soon change the way markets operated. In just a week, I had a Series B funding meeting with investors who had already valued my company at $300 million. But they would never see that. They could only see what they wanted to see. I could have told them all of this right then. I could have explained that my work wasn't a failure, that I wasn't wasting my time. But I knew it would make no difference. My family had never been able to see beyond their own narrow views of success. "You're right," I said instead, my voice steady. "I'm clearly a disappointment. Sarah deserves the money more than I do." Sarah shifted uncomfortably by the window, and for just a moment, I saw a glimpse of the sister I used to know, the one who shared ice cream with me after bad days at school, who helped me with my math homework before the weight of our parents' expectations drove a wedge between us. "Emma," she began, but I held up my hand. "It's fine. Sarah. Really. Congratulations on becoming partner. You've earned it," I said, my voice lacking the bitterness I felt. I was too tired for bitterness. I turned toward the door, not wanting to be in that room any longer. "I've got a meeting," I said over my shoulder, my words hanging in the air like a final act of defiance. "But enjoy dinner. I'm sure it will be lovely. Will you at least join us for dinner?" My mother called after me, her voice tinged with genuine concern. "Your father reserved a table at Le Bernardin to celebrate Sarah's promotion." I paused, my hand on the door. I glanced back at them, my father's disapproving frown, my mother's practiced worry. Sarah's mix of triumph and guilt, and I knew I had made the right decision to leave. There was nothing left for me here. Not anymore. I've got a lot of work to do, I said. And before they could respond, I left. The drive back to my apartment gave me time to think. The trust fund had never been about the money. I had more than enough of my own now. The money meant nothing. What mattered was what it represented, the expectations, the disappointment, the weight of their judgment. My parents had set up identical trusts for Sarah and me when we were born, meant to be released on our 33rd birthdays. But there was a clause that allowed them to redirect the funds if they felt one of us was failing to live up to their standards. My phone buzzed, pulling me out of my thoughts. It was a message from Maya, my CTO. VCs moved the meeting up to tomorrow. You ready? I smiled, the tension in my chest easing slightly. I was ready. More than ready. Time to change the game. When I got to my apartment, the tiny space my father had always dismissed, I kicked off my heels and walked straight to my home office. The wall-mounted screens displayed real-time data from Athena's latest test run. Numbers scrolled past, each one representing another successful prediction, another validation of what we had built. The playing with computers my father had dismissed had led to something extraordinary. My phone buzzed again, this time from Sarah. I'm sorry about Dad, her text read. You know how he gets. The trust fund doesn't matter anyway. Right. You're doing fine with your computer stuff. I stared at the message, feeling the familiar sting. Even Sarah's attempt at kindness came with a subtle dismissal of my work. I typed back, thanks, Sarah. Enjoy dinner. Turning back to my screens, I pulled up the pitch deck for tomorrow's VC meeting. The numbers were staggering. Our beta testing had shown Athena outperforming traditional trading algorithms by 32%. Major banks were already quietly reaching out, hoping to get early access to the technology. But I didn't need their approval. I didn't need anyone's approval. This was it. Athena was about to change everything. And my father would never see it coming. The next morning, I woke early. A habit that had long been ingrained in me. The sky was a muted grey, clouds heavy with the weight of the day ahead. I brewed my coffee in the quiet solitude of my apartment, trying to shake off the lingering weight of last night's encounter. There was still the sting of my father's final dismissal. But I knew I couldn't let it hold me back. The first few hours of the day were spent doing what I did best, coding, refining algorithms, adjusting variables. Athena was close. The VC meeting at noon was critical. If it went well, we'd secure the funding to scale the platform. I couldn't afford to let distractions like my family's expectations seep into my focus. At 11:30 a.m., I slipped on my blazer, a dark, sharp cut that made me feel like I was stepping into another life, and grabbed my laptop. My heart pounded with excitement and anxiety, the two emotions blending into one. I hadn't gotten this far by playing it safe. And this meeting was the next big step. I arrived at the office building an hour early. The sleek, modern lobby was full of polished glass, chrome, and the muted hum of people making their way in and out. A far cry from my cramped, dimly lit apartment where I had spent countless nights working alone. I made my way up to the 12th floor, where the VC firm's offices were located. As I stepped off the elevator, I was greeted by their receptionist, who showed me to the conference room. The walls were lined with abstract art, each piece more pretentious than the last. A single, low table sat in the center, surrounded by high-backed chairs that made me feel small. But I wasn't here to feel small. I was here to make them see what I'd built, to make them realize the potential of Athena. By the time the investors walked in, I had already set up my laptop and arranged the materials in front of me. They were just as I expected, sharp, well-dressed, and with the kind of confidence that came from decades of making millions. Emma. Nice to meet you, said Michael, the lead investor. His handshake firm but brief. His dark suit and crisp shirt were immaculate. his polished demeanor almost too perfect. But there was a flicker of something in his eyes, curiosity. Maybe. Or doubt. Nice to meet you, I replied, shaking his hand. Thank you for taking the time to meet with me today. The first few minutes were the usual pleasantries. I took a deep breath, plugged in my laptop, and launched into my pitch. I had practiced this speech 1,000 times, refining it with each rehearsal. This wasn't just about Athena, it was about everything I'd sacrificed to get here. The late nights, the doubts, the long, lonely road that had led me to this very moment. We've built a predictive platform that outperforms existing models by over 30%. Athena uses deep learning to analyze market trends, far beyond what traditional algorithms are capable of. The results we've seen so far have been extraordinary. In just 6 months of beta testing, we've reduced trading losses by an average of 21%, while increasing market performance by 15%. With the right resources, we can scale this model to a global level. I watched their faces closely as I spoke. Michael and his colleagues exchanged looks, some subtle, others not so much. There was an underlying skepticism, but I could feel the shift. They were listening. They were intrigued. We've also secured partnerships with several financial institutions who are already interested in integrating Athena into their systems, I added, pushing the numbers further. But we need the capital to make it happen. This platform has the potential to change the way global markets operate. And we're ready to lead the charge. I paused, letting the silence hang in the air for a moment. Silence had always been a tool of mine. It created space for the other person to process, to think, to feel. And I could see them thinking. Could they see it too? Finally, Michael spoke. Impressive. Emma, you've certainly put in the work. But there's a lot of competition out there. What sets Athena apart from other platforms already in development? I nodded, prepared for this. Athena's core difference is our ability to integrate real-time data with a dynamic, evolving model. Most other platforms rely on static datasets and backtesting. But Athena continuously adapts to new information. It learns as it goes, making real-time predictions that outperform both human traders and traditional algorithms. Michael raised an eyebrow, clearly impressed. I see. And your revenue model? Subscription-based, with tiered pricing for different levels of access. We also plan to partner with large banks to offer Athena as a premium service to their clients. He leaned back in his chair, stroking his chin thoughtfully. You've done your homework. That's for sure. I've done more than that, I replied, my voice steady. I've lived it. Athena isn't just a project for me, it's my life's work. The room grew quiet again. But this time, it wasn't uncomfortable. They were considering it. I could feel it. Michael stood up, signaling the end of the meeting. We'll be in touch, he said. His tone softer now, more measured. Thanks for coming in, Emma. You've given us a lot to think about. I stood, shook their hands again, and walked out of the room. The tension that had gripped me for the last hour began to lift as soon as the elevator doors closed behind me. I had done it. I had given everything I had. And now it was out of my hands. But as the elevator descended, the realization hit me. This was only the beginning. The work, the pain, the doubt, it was all part of the process. I wasn't just fighting for funding. I was fighting for my place in the world. A place that wasn't defined by my father's expectations or the narrow path he had set for me. As I stepped out into the bustling streets of downtown, the weight I had been carrying for so long felt just a little lighter. The road ahead would be difficult. But I was ready for whatever came next. For the first time in years, I felt like I was walking toward something, not away from it. The days that followed the VC meeting were a blur. I buried myself in work, as if I could erase all the doubts and insecurities that kept creeping in. I couldn't afford to be distracted. The opportunity with Athena was too big, too important, and I had to make sure every piece of the puzzle was in place. By the end of the week, the email I had been waiting for arrived. I saw Michael's name in the subject line, and my heart skipped a beat. Slowly, I opened it, the anticipation almost unbearable. Dear Emma, thank you for meeting with us last week. After much deliberation, we are pleased to offer you the funding you requested. Contingent upon final negotiations, we're excited to move forward. Let's schedule a meeting next week to discuss the details. Best regards, Michael. I let out a breath I didn't realize I had been holding. The deal was happening. Athena was going to be everything I had dreamed of. And more. I sat back in my chair, the weight of the moment sinking in. This was the turning point I had been working for. This was it. But just as I was beginning to savor the moment, my phone rang. It was an unfamiliar number, but something told me to pick it up. Hello, Emma. A voice on the other end. Soft. Hesitant. But familiar. My stomach dropped. It was my mother. Mom, I said, trying to keep the surprise out of my voice. It had been months since we last spoke, months since that dinner with my father, where everything had gone wrong. Yes, it's me. I know it's been a while, but I wanted to reach out. She sounded nervous, her words stumbling over one another. I heard about the meeting. I saw the news about Athena. I'm proud of you, Emma. Proud. After all this time, after all the years of silence. Now she was proud. I didn't know how to respond. My emotions were a tangled mess of confusion, anger, and something else, hope. Maybe. Could it be that after all this time, she wanted to make amends? I'm glad to hear that, I said, my voice carefully neutral. But we need to talk about what happened. About how things ended up the way they did. She was silent for a moment. And then I heard her take a shaky breath. I know, Emma. I know. And I'm sorry. But I want to be a part of your life again. I want to try to fix things. I know I can't undo what's been done. But I'm asking for another chance. I stared at the wall in front of me, my heart pounding. How could she expect me to just forgive her? After everything? My father. Her silence. Their expectations that crushed me? It was all still too raw. You can't just waltz back in, Mom, I said, my voice cold. More harsh than I intended. You don't get to come back after all this time and act like everything is fine. It's not fine. You can't just pretend. I regretted the words as soon as I said them. There was pain in her voice as she replied. I don't want to pretend, Emma. I don't want to keep running away from you anymore. From everything. I let out a frustrated sigh, running my hand through my hair. I had spent so long building walls around myself, keeping everyone at a distance. I had made myself immune to hurt, to vulnerability. But now it felt like those walls were starting to crack. I didn't know if I was ready to let her in again, to risk that kind of pain. I don't know if I can do this right now, I said quietly. There's too much going on. I've worked my whole life to get where I am, and I can't afford to be distracted. There was a pause, and then her voice, softer this time, almost pleading. I understand. I just want you to know that I'm here. Whenever you're ready, I'll be here. I hung up without saying another word, staring at my phone. My hands were shaking, and I felt an ache in my chest that I didn't know how to make sense of. It wasn't just anger, it was grief. Raw and unspoken. That had been buried under years of disappointment. I didn't know how to fix this, and I didn't know if I even wanted to. But at that moment, I had to focus on the present. Athena had always been my priority, and I couldn't afford to lose sight of that now. The next few days were a whirlwind. I met with Michael again, finalizing the terms of the deal, working through the legal and financial details. We shook hands, and suddenly it all felt so real. Athena was no longer just a vision. It was becoming a company, a product, something tangible. But as I worked, the thoughts of my mother, of the fractured relationship with my family, lingered in the background, always just out of reach. They were a shadow, something I couldn't ignore, but that I wasn't ready to face either. In those quiet moments, I realized that no matter how far I went, no matter how much success I achieved, something would always be missing. I couldn't ignore the emotional weight of the past forever. As the week drew to a close, I found myself standing at the window of my apartment again, looking out at the city below. The lights flickered on as the sun began to set, and for a fleeting moment, I wondered what it would be like if I let go of my need to be perfect. If I allowed myself to feel the hurt that I had buried for so long. I wasn't ready to answer that question yet. But I knew one thing: Athena was my future. The rest I would have to figure out along the way. As Emma sat by the window, looking out over the city she had built her dreams in, she realized that no amount of success could fill the emptiness of unresolved feelings. Athena was her future, but healing the past was her next challenge. With a deep breath, she knew that the journey ahead wouldn't be easy, but it would be hers to walk. Sometimes, the hardest part isn't climbing to the top, it's letting go of the weight that holds us back. And Emma was finally ready to do just that. Thank you for joining me on this journey. If you enjoyed this story, make sure to subscribe to the channel for more life stories. Remember, every chapter we close leads to a new one, so let's keep writing our own. Stay tuned for more.